we are so powerful as women. And, I think we have this, the potential to influence and impact our children and our partners and our families and our communities and beyond.
Welcome to Radically Loved Radio. I am your host, Rosie Acosta, yoga teacher and teacher trainer, mindfulness coach, speaker, and creative writer. I am also the founder of radicallylove.com, a website where you can go for more information about yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and lifestyle advice. On this podcast, we talk to people within our health and wellness community that are creating content through the ritualistic practice of yoga, meditation, or overall mindful living. We hope to create value in your life so that you can achieve your highest potential and live a radically loved life. To stay in touch with us, just follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Rosie Acosta and on Facebook at Radically Loved Rosie. You can sign up for our newsletter on radicallylove.com to stay up to date on future workshops, retreats, and latest podcasts. I hope that Radically Loved Radio leaves you feeling inspired to create something powerful. My teacher, Yoga Rupa Rajstreger, says, if you powerfully believe in the value you have to offer the world, your love and passion for it will be an unstoppable force. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, most of you know that I have returned back to a plant-based diet, so my beverage consumption has increased quite a bit. Don't judge. I know there's some of you out there that really enjoy beverages. So one of my favorite things to drink lately, which I'm consuming a lot of, is Four Sigmatic's new Golden Latte Mushroom Mix. It has shiitake and turmeric in it. It's totally organic, caffeine-free, vegan, and only 1 gram of palm sugar per serving. I love being able to travel with these little packets because they're really easy to make. All you need is some hot water. Some of the additional ingredients in the golden latte are adaptogenic tulsi, warming ginger, and a pinch of black pepper to support turmeric's skin-loving properties. So not only do your insides feel amazing, but your skin looks great. Go to Four Sigmatic now and enter promo code RADICALLYLOVED, that's RADICALLYLOVED, to get 15% off of your entire purchase. Be sure to check out all the other products that they have there as well. I'm so excited to have you. First of all, just only because I love the sound of your voice. I'm sure you get that a lot though, right,
No,
Jessica?
not really.
I'm excited to talk to you about purpose and everything, your life's work, really, everything that you've done. I'm so excited to have you on as a guest on the show. So thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And where are you right now?
I am in Surrey, which is effectively suburbia, so a little bit outside of London, which is lovely. It's kind of close enough to get into the city very quickly, but it's nice and quiet, and we have, green and flowers and foxes,
Yeah,
which I love.
that's wonderful. I love that. And so I feel like you and I have had sort of like paralleled lives. Like,
Uh-huh.
just in your career path and
Right.
being able to get to a place where your life shifted and you're now living, for lack of a different word, you're living a life of
Mm.
purpose.
Mm.
And I'm so excited for our listeners to get to know you and to get a little bit of background of who you are and what you do.
So I'll try and be succinct because I feel like I've had like 9 lives. Um, I am, the easy way to say it is I'm an entrepreneur and author. Um, and my background has been like 20 years in media. I started as a journalist before moving into PR, um, and became an accidental entrepreneur about 12 years ago when I realized there were no multicultural greeting cards in the sort of, the high street, like the main shopping store, the main stores in London.
Uh-huh.
And I'd been looking for a card which really represented my little girl who had beautiful afro hair, And she was going through this stage where she didn't really like her hair. So I was looking for a brown-skinned princess, just a really simple card. And I was going to write, "You are perfect as you are." And just discovered there was nothing in the high street which was representative. And so decided I would be the woman to create that missing range. And that sort of took me on this entrepreneurial journey, which led to me winning a few business awards and being honored by the Queen. And then I started my own PR agency because I really wanted to bring a new way of, I wanted to bring integrity and authenticity into public relations. And then most recently I wrote Purpose 2 years ago, which, is published by Hay House and has taken me into this new wonderful world of writing, which I'm just relishing at the moment.
That's so incredible. And I love that that was sort of the catalyst to get you to what you're doing now. And so I know that you also do speaking, and you talk about, like why our calling is so pressing to who we want to become. And to me, I akin this to us, in yoga, it's finding our dharma. It's like that internal desire that's like burning within us that wants to become realized. And so I guess my question to you is, as you lived many careers, and you've had these really incredible accolades, at what point, or have there been many different points in your life where you were able to sort of discern what that calling was for you? Like how were you able to discern what that voice was?
That's a good question. I think, you know what it is? I think often it was knowing what it wasn't. So, those moments where you start to feel a kind of conflict between where you are, be that environment, workplace or relationship, and who you feel you are becoming. Because our dharma or our purpose is something which evolves. It's not stagnant. And so there were points in my 20s where, flying around the world on private jets and working with superstars was loads of fun, like it was great.
Yeah.
But as I got older, I started to, became more sort of sure of my values, and my perspective shifted. And so, it's there were definitely moments where I started to feel this space between who I was and who I was becoming, and this compulsion really which was calling me to step often out of a situation or an environment and into something new, which often was unknown. But the key is to recognize that disconnect, and listen to it and take action, because otherwise that's where we start to experience a lack of fulfillment and discontent, and at best and unhappiness and even illness at worst, I think, when that calling goes unheard and unresponded to.
And I feel like that's something that we're hugely suffering from now. I think that there's so many people that are just not happy, and I feel like that's why this type of work is so revered, because you're providing a little bit of insight in how it related to your story, but also being able to like mentor people along the way.
Yes, I mean it's beautiful. It's I feel very blessed. I've been fortunate to experience a lot in my life already. But I'm so proud of my book. I'm so proud of this book because it's the bravest thing I've done in many ways, just to really allow myself to be seen, warts and all, because for a long time I was, awarded these sort of titles of, hot women under 30, not in a sexual sense, but in a, an accomplished sense,
right.
Hopefully in a sexy sense too. But no, but, and it's like, well, yeah, inspiring and role model, but also there were, other things going on, and that wasn't the whole picture. And, there's such a power in sharing and being vulnerable enough to allow yourself to really be seen, so that people can connect with that and resonate and know that, you know, it's not all light and positivity, and that's okay. And, you know, there's hope. So, and the feedback's just been beautiful. And it's really, yeah, it's very, very meaningful to share something which connects with people.
Yeah, and I mean, you also speak to the fact that um, you were a teenage mother and you were expelled from school, and you
Hmm.
know all of these obstacles that you had to overcome just as a young woman, which again, it speaks highly to the work that you're doing now, and providing the right questions and the right support for us to be able to ask. So, do you ever, now where you are in your life, like how often do you think about that portion in your life?
All the time, because, you know, every time I am trying to work out how to parent a 19-year-old,
Oh,
I'm reminded of how, you know, ill-equipped I am in many ways, and that, you know, I'm still working it out. I look at my friends and their kids are 5. So there's nobody who, you know, who's kind of been there.
yeah.
I'm really, like, you know, I'm taking the first step, so I'm blazing the trail. Um, but no, yeah, all the time, and in many ways, it's wonderful, because it means I don't take anything for granted. Every morning I wake up and I do my gratitude list, and, you know, it comes from the heart. You know, it's not intellectual. I am truly grateful and blessed for this life and this space that I find myself in, because, you know, those mornings and evenings and days when things were just such a struggle and there was a cloud above my head, you know, it's very easy to reconnect with those feelings. And yeah, it's wonderful to have the juxtaposition and the contrast.
Yeah.
um so I and also just to be able to empathize and connect with people from a broad spectrum of backgrounds is something that I'm grateful for. um I think it's important, and yeah, that's one blessing that comes with having experienced such a range of circumstances in my life.
How do you think it how do you think being in the UK is different in that sense? Do you think it's the same everywhere? Like, do you think that we experience those things in the same way here in the States?
Um, when you say those same things, you mean, what do you mean?
Like, just I'll give you an example. Like
Hmm.
in the States, like it seems to be more prevalent now, you know, this idea of, you know, self development and
Hmm.
being able to provide support for people who are, you know, overcoming
Sure.
obstacles and trying to like create a better life in a very sort of conscientious, self aware
Hmm.
place, right? And
Mm.
I find that you know, being in Europe, like it's just things are different. It's like sometimes the things that we think are a big deal here in the States, my UK friends are like, that's not really that big of a deal.
Because this wasn't part of my strategy, I didn't wake up one day and say, right, for the third chapter of my career, I'm going to position myself in this mind, body, spirit space and
Hmm.
reinvent myself as somebody who talks about purpose. It didn't go that way for me. I kind of landed here. I evolved here. And so, but it is interesting for me that, you know, my background isn't the typical background for the people who operate in this space. And I think there's a power and there's a benefit to that, because it means that, you know, we can all live better, happier, fulfilled, you know, limitless lives once we grasp that we are, you know, the power is with us and that we are effectively co-creating these lives. But so often that message is only shared, you know, within a certain community who are more privileged and have the space to even ponder things like purpose.
Hmm.
So for me, you know, I'm really, really committed and passionate about using my voice in a way where it reaches as many people as possible, and definitely those who really need it, like who um could really benefit from just seeing things in a new way and having new perspectives. I think that's important. So, I prefer to focus on the kind of the positive of it, is that, I do have this background, which means that if I'm speaking to another kid from a council estate, or, from a dysfunctional background, or somebody who's marginalized, they may listen because they may hear something in me that they connect with.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, for me growing up as well, like not having, we didn't have very many role models. Like, I grew up during, in the 90s during the LA riots, and we were, surrounded by a lot of dysfunction, and there was never anybody that we really had that was the model of, oh, you don't have to do things this way, or like you say, have somebody who's modeling a different behavior or a different perspective. Like there wasn't anybody doing that. It's like we had teachers in school and stuff, but it just didn't have the same effect because we were also sort of conditioned to believe that, teachers were part of the system, and, like the policemen were out to get us, like this kind of mentality. So then at that point, like, where do you go from there,
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many of those ideologies and outlooks and belief systems that just keep getting passed down from generation to generation. And I have this I'm a bit like, I find myself a bit like a sponge these days, where and it's good and bad, but we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to to share any, anything that we learn. How can we pass it on? How can we pay it forward? And the joy is there, it's that's where joy is. It's in that sharing.
I love that. How is it then, having this, I like to call it like, your responsibility, your duty now that you have, with this new, it's not even new. I mean, this is something that I think you've probably been doing throughout all of your lifetimes, like with every career that you've had is this idea of finding your truth and embracing your calling. Like, I'm sure that you were able to write this book because you were having these experiences during this process. How has that affected your parenting?
I think you're right. I the only difference is now it's like I have 2 feet in. So I was doing it before, but still trying to conform, still trying to often be a circle, trying to be a box, because I thought people wanted boxes. So in some ways, this was like a kind of coming out. I had this kind of profound spiritual experience during the period I was caring for my dad, which is when when he was terminally ill, and that's when I started to write, and that was 2 years ago. So that was a big turning point, but it felt a bit like a coming out, like, this is who I am. If it isn't for you, feel free to drop off at this point, because this is who I am,
Yeah.
So that's the shift now. And in terms of my parenting, I guess, first of all, I was just trying to work it out as a young mum, with the knowledge that I had, which was limited. My daughter is amazing, and that has everything to do with the essence of who she is. So she made it easy. But I think it's this shift from feeling that our role as parents is to mold these little human beings, to feeling that our responsibility is to create a space and an environment where they are safe enough to become more of who they already are. So, how can we nurture this this spirit, which is, you know, comes to us with its personality. I mean, you see your kid's personality early on. How can we create a space where they are just confident and comfortable enough to evolve with the boundaries? And so it's a slightly different, or quite a different approach, I guess.
Yeah. That's my little sister is 20. She just turned 20 last week. So we've had her for the last 2 years, and she was around when she was little. But I feel very akin to parents of teenagers, and I really feel for you guys,
Oh,
just
wow.
because I'm like, wow, this sucks sometimes. I mean, that's the
Yes.
truth, you know. But it's interesting for me, and especially because this is part of your work, but you're also a parent, and I feel like obviously you've done a really great job at integrating the two together, and I'm sure your daughter is an incredible human, as you are.
Thank you.
How can we, as let's say mentors or parents, begin to instill that desire for truth, and that embracing of what our calling is and what our purpose is? How can we guide our young ones to do that?
I think we have to live it. I think, yeah, it's like anything, you know, we can, you know, if you think about in our relationships with our other halves, if we have them, you know, we can nag and moan and coerce, but when they really make shifts is when they see the shift in us, when they
Yeah.
see our behavior change, is when they're like, oh, what's going on here? So I think it is literally that, you know, being the change. And when we adopt behaviors which enhance our lives and make us happy and fulfilled, we that's where, you know, we are so powerful as women. And you know, I think we have this the potential to influence and impact our children and our partners and our families and our communities and beyond. Because, you know, we were always the matriarchs. We were always the kind of the peak in the triangle. It's just that that's been forgotten through the ages. But we really do. We have such a power and such a responsibility that comes with that. But it starts with us, you know, adopting that you know, loving ourselves enough, because that's what it comes down to. It's the ultimate self-love, to allow yourself to live out the life that you know, that is your truth, and be the person that, you know, you truly are, at your core, beneath all of these layers. And it requires courage to step into that. Often there's often a whole process that we go through before we get there, which never really ends. But if we do that, then it will become the norm for our children to do that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that you're saying that, because I feel like it's such a powerful thing to be able to do, so that they can see the power that we have, not only just as women, but as strong women and entrepreneurs and spiritual leaders and teachers, and you know, all of these different roles that we can be extremely successful in and thrive in, so that they can have that security. You know, I feel like, because the equality between, you know, men and women is still something very new. You know, I hate to say that, but it's true. You know, like it's definitely something that it's, you know, has not been cultivated in us enough. So I almost feel like part of us, we have to do this unlearning thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I do, 100%. And it's on both sides, you know, because there's a pressure that falls on the shoulders of men. You know, we've been, the conditioning is twofold. It's us as somehow inferior, as not having the same rights and the same standing in society. But on the men's side, it's that they must be strong, they mustn't show emotion, they must carry the world on their shoulders. And I don't know what the stats are in the States, but here, male suicide is a massive problem. It's a massive, there's just this huge, I think it's the second biggest killer of men here. And we have to look at where is that coming from? Like, why is it that men can't communicate and express in the way that perhaps is more comfortable for us to do as women? So I think there's a lot to unpick, but we can start doing it within ourselves, and then also within our relationships, and start to cultivate much more healthier, natural paradigms for even what relationships and families look like. But when we, this is a big piece of work, particularly when we are in, families that, and that's before we start talking about, culturally and ethnicity and all of that mess that we have to undo. This stuff is far reaching, but it starts with us actually acknowledging it, and acknowledging that we are not it. We are not that. We are not that travesty. We are not that inequality. And building our sense of self from a place which is, steeped in truth.
Yeah. So how do we begin to move past that, do you think? It's like, in a way where we're not trying to negate our conditioning or revert our past in any way. It's just really opening of the bandwidth of understanding and cultivating something new, right? So how do we start to do that now?
I think I think that it's twofold. There's a piece of work that needs to be done by institutions and by, leaders and governments. But really, unless it's done on an individual level, I don't know how change can be affected in a way which is anything but surface level. Because, you can bring in initiatives and quotas and things, but if there isn't this fundamental integrity and real understanding of why we need change, I don't know that it's sustainable. So I think, the more of us that start to become conscious of how we are impacted and influenced by ideas and narratives which are just untrue, forget unhealthy, they just are untrue, and they hold us back individually, and they hold us back as a community and as a human race. The more of us that wake up to that and start to do that unpicking and strip back those layers and create a new, a new way, that has a ripple effect. And I'm hopeful that we are in the process of seeing that start to unfold, or perhaps it's been unfolding for some time. But from where I'm sitting, I'm hopeful.
Oh, me too. That's two of us. Hopefully we can create a ripple effect. So for the people that are listening to you and to this conversation, that are maybe struggling with finding their purpose or finding their calling, like maybe they just have, they're at an age where they feel like, I should have already found my calling. Where is it? I can't find it. What would you say to that person?
I would say chill. It's okay. It's okay. It's just okay. Take the pressure off. And the mere fact that you are feeling a sense of dissatisfaction with where you are is a good thing, because it means that you're ready. You're being honest. There are so many people out there who won't even admit to themselves that they aren't happy, that they aren't content, that they're not where they would have liked to be. They've accepted that this is their lot. And some of that is conditioning as well, because it's incredible how, When I used to go and do the commute to work, you'd see all these miserable faces, and it was so normalized that this is just a stressful, miserable thing that we do to get to the weekend. It's bizarre. And that 3-week or 2-week holiday,
Right.
maybe once or twice if we're lucky. No, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're going, there's something missing is a beautiful thing, because that's an invitation. That's where you're starting to really connect with what's really going on inside of you. And then it's about taking action. And it might not be that you can make that leap, that transition into whatever it is that's calling you. And sometimes it's not a new job. Sometimes it's just a new way of being. It's not always about changing career. But it's about exploring that and prioritizing yourself enough to, make that exploration a priority in your life. And that could just be, I call it positively disrupting your life. It's about how can I put myself in environments where I'm having new conversations that inspire new outlooks and new ways of thinking and new belief systems. Mm-hmm. It's about doing anything other than the status quo for yourself.
Right. Oh, I love that. I know that this is something you talk about all the time, like being able to disrupt those patterns that we have, and it's that whole idea that nothing's going to change. We can't expect things to be different if we continue to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm. I'm curious if you, throughout your life, had any words of wisdom that you lived by, or like a prayer that you had, or any sort of affirmation that you've had your entire life that you always go back to?
Not consciously. Not consciously. And I think that's why when I, had this profound experience during this period where I cared for my dad, and what was so life-changing about that it was the first time that I'd stopped. The first time I was really truly present and in the moment, after this lifetime of doing and being in this hamster wheel of constantly thinking about the next goal and the next thing. And it was during that period that I realized that I really went from having a faith that there was a support out there for us, that was bigger than just all that we can see and touch, to really experiencing it. And so, for my entire life, I thought that the outcome of my world depended on my shoulders, and in some ways that paid dividends, because it meant that I had so much to prove, both to myself and to society, having been a young mum, that I was just driven to keep achieving, and in the hope that I would get to this elusive place of enough, which doesn't exist, right?
Right.
Certainly not by anything external. So, there was always that determination not to give up, because I was in search of something. But yeah, there wasn't anything consciously that I affirmed. And I think if there had been, then I wouldn't have, I was very disconnected from myself for many, many years. And that's the shift. And that's the, today it's less about, focusing on the next goal, and more about what is it that's evolving here? What is it that I feel called to do? So, it's a real shift in, I'm still as ambitious, but it's coming from a much healthier, whole space now.
Yeah, it's coming from a place of sustainability, as opposed to, I don't know, maybe like a place of like lack, or a place of just trying to gain more momentum. And it almost sounds like maybe you didn't have like a mantra or something, but you had the calling. You've had the calling. Yeah. Maybe that's what it was. It was like that unspoken desire to,
Yeah. You know what? Actually, I would say, thank you. You've just highlighted what it was. I think I had this. So one of the things that was a big, like a buzzword in our house as kids, through my parents, my dad particularly, it was all about integrity and truth, being honest and being honest with yourself. So I think that seed was really planted very young. And so whenever I did feel like I was not, that I was in conflict with myself, I had to act on it. And so that was there. I just didn't recognize it for all of what it was at that time. And that's helped me very much to evolve. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that even more now.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you just the last two questions, and I ask all my guests these same two questions. And the first one is about what Radically Loved is, and why I created the podcast, is this belief idea that we are completely supported by the universe, that the universe works for us and not against us, and we are radically loved and radically supported by Source, God, the universe, whatever higher power of your understanding. So the two questions are, the first one is, how do you feel radically loved? And the second part to that is, what do you radically love?
Oh, okay. How do I feel radically loved? I'm here experiencing serenity. I have my moments. Of course I do. I have my days. But this sense of peace, and wholeness, and this knowledge that I can surrender my challenges and those things that that feel like they're too much to work out on my own, to my higher power. I mean, that's changed. That knowledge, that knowing, has changed my life. And I, the more that we become open and build that relationship, the more we start to experience it, and that in itself is radical love, I think. And what do I radically love? This journey. This journey, it's I thought I knew it all. I really thought, I thought I knew, I thought I knew most things. I'd given birth, I'd experienced highs, I'd experienced deep, dark lows, and then discovered that there were miracles and profound joy and pain of the same depth that was beyond my comprehension, and that was beautiful to discover. Beautiful to feel so insignificant and realize how little we know and how much more there is to know.
That is my favorite feeling. I love feeling that insignificance, because it just makes everything else seem so trivial, and it literally is like the best way to change your perspective. Jessica, thank you so much for being a guest on the show, and for just creating such a beautiful work of art for us to be able to enjoy. The book is called Purpose, and for the people listening to this podcast, where can they get more information about you and your book and what you do?
Sure. So, on my website, which is jessicahuie.com, my social media handle is Jessica Huie MBE, and my book is kind of everywhere, Amazon and bookshops and things. And thank you. This has been so lovely.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. For the people listening, all of those links will be on the show notes. So if you click the show notes, all of the links to get in contact with Jessica will be there. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being on. I hope to have you again. Please come on again.
I'd love to. This has been such a pleasure, Rosie. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. I know you got to go, but thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to share it with you.
Yeah, it's such a joy. All right, my love. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by our very special sponsor, Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is the sister science to yoga. Ayurveda relies on the intelligence of Mother Nature and our own body's ability to heal. Most of you know that as a health coach and a nutritionist, I have spent most of my career always trying to find more natural and holistic modalities. I have an autoimmune disease, so this makes it a little bit more challenging, but it's manageable nonetheless so long as my body is in full balance. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to my dear friend and fellow podcaster, Sahara Rose, and I was telling her I was having all of these issues with my stomach, my digestion, and she recommended this brand called Ayurveda. So I did my due diligence and I researched them, and I found that this company has really created an incredible brand of supplements to support everything that we love about our bodies and our body's natural ability to heal, but also using the tools of Ayurveda. So they use this as their foundation to everything that they do. As with everything, I'm always a bit dubious because I know there's not a one-fix-all supplement or brand, but I tried it. I used both the joints supplement and the digestion, and I'll tell you, after using it for about a month, I noticed such a huge difference. They are just such an incredible company, and I was able to chat with them and talk to them not only about the high quality of their product, but the high quality of their brand and their company and what they're trying to do. I quickly found that these people are my people, and all we're trying to do is create a ripple effect in the world so that we can continue to impact people's lives and create better health, deeper connections, and just overall healthy living. I'm so excited to not only partner with them, but to have them share a special code for all of the listeners. Go to uveda.com and type in Rosie, that's ROSIE, at checkout to get a special discount on all of their products. Do you want to go on an epic yoga adventure? I do. In fact, I do all the time. When do I not want to go on an epic yoga adventure? And this fall, in an attempt to see the Northern Lights, we will go to Iceland into a journey through the chakras. It's going to be fun. If you're curious, you can email me at rosie@radicallyloved.com or go to the show notes and click the links to each of the retreats, or you can go to radicallyloved.com. See you soon. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I am so excited to continue to do this. Please share this with your friends. Email us, message us on Instagram at Rosie Acosta or on Twitter at Rosie Acosta. Subscribe on iTunes, write a review. We love doing this, so please help us continue to keep this podcast going. Thanks for listening.